Hola, Happy Day of the Dead, or Feliz Dia de Muertos. Day of the Dead is it's most closely associated with Mexico. It's known as a Mexican holiday, but it's also celebrated in other places too, like Guatemala. And it's a holiday where families celebrate and honor the spirits of their deceased loved ones. So people who they love, who have passed away. It's a time to remember them, to honor them, and to celebrate their life. That's done through a lot of different traditions, things like offerings to their loved ones, special food, music, and we're going to learn all about Day of the Dead in this presentation. All right, so we're going to learn about the background, the history of Dia de Muertos, why it's an important tradition, and then what are the traditions of Dia de Muertos, what is done to celebrate on this day. And finally, we're going to look at some of the symbols, some of the objects or images that you're going to see around Dia de Muertos. All right, so the background, what are the origins of Day of the Dead? It's really a combination. The holiday that we see today, the celebration that we see today, is a combination of ancient Aztec traditions and that Spanish Catholic influence when Spain came to like Central and South America and to where Mexico now is, and conquered and colonized those areas. So the roots go way back like 3,000 years to pre-Hispanic cultures. By pre-Hispanic, pre is before, and Hispanic is the Spanish, so before the Spanish ever came to Mexico. And these cultures, like the Aztec, for example, really viewed death as like a natural part of life. It wasn't something that they feared, and so you really see that viewpoint, that perspective, in a lot of these Dia de Muertos traditions and celebrations. So why is it important? I think you could almost answer that already. It's a time to remember the people that we love who have passed away. We grieve, we celebrate, excuse me, and we remember them. And as a community, often, in the United States, grief is something that's very like private and can be sometimes very lonely. And so something like Dia de Muertos, where you're getting together with your community, you're going to cemeteries, you're sort of celebrating this holiday together, and you're also grieving together as a community, and it makes it less lonely and less isolating sometimes to experience grief. And the other reason that Dia de Muertos is important is that it normalizes death. A lot of these images, like the skulls and that kind of thing, they almost like make fun of death or poke fun of death, which really is where we're seeing like that pre-Hispanic sort of tradition or like perspective of death being more like a natural part of life and not something to be scared of necessarily, but something to be more accepting of and even to like make fun of a little bit. Oh, there's this beautiful quote by Octavio Paz, who's a famous Mexican author. The Mexican is familiar with death, jokes about it, caresses it, sleeps with it, celebrates with it. So really showing how death is really viewed in Mexican culture compared to how it's viewed in the United States. So what are some of the traditions for Dia de Muertos? Let's take a look. Firstly, it's celebrated on the 1st and 2nd of November. The 1st is often set aside to remember children who died, so to remember those folks that died as children. And then the main holiday is on November 2nd, and that's when we remember everybody else. Some traditions around Dia de Muertos: ofrendas or altars or offerings built in homes in order to remember and celebrate people in your family or people that you love who have passed on. Vigils in cemeteries, so people go to cemeteries, clean off the graves of loved ones, decorate them really beautifully with like flowers and candles, and then spend all night in the cemetery. There's food, there's music. Parades, so like big community parades with people dressed up as like skeletons and skulls and music and that kind of thing in the parades. Markets, beautiful big markets where you can go and buy all of your supplies, everything you need to make your ofrenda, to clean off your graves of your loved ones, that kind of thing. The calaveras, or the sugar skulls, little like candies made in the shape of skulls, that people buy. They put them on the ofrendas, they eat them, they exchange them with loved ones. And then painted faces, right? We've all seen, I think at this point, images of, like the people with their faces painted beautifully to look like skeletons or skulls, or, like a mask, wearing a mask, something like that as well. All right. So, what are some other symbols? We've talked about some of them with like the painted faces and the skulls and that kind of thing. But what are some of the other symbols that you would see during Dia de Muertos? First of all, we talked about people building altars or ofrendas in their homes to remember and to honor loved ones who have passed away. So, what's going to go on an altar or an ofrenda? The first thing, the most important thing is, that portrait, a picture of the person or the people that you're remembering. Lots of times crosses, which definitely is because of that Catholic influence, that Spanish influence, right? Flowers, and specifically marigolds, placed on the altar with the idea that the smell helps to guide spirits home for Day of the Dead. And also often like the petals are put in to form like a pathway towards the altar to guide the spirits home. Candles, the light, right, to light the way for the spirits as they come home. Other symbols that you might see, we've talked about skulls and skeletons, both to symbolize death and also to like normalize death, poke fun of it a little bit. Incense you'll see a lot, like in the cemeteries when the graves are cleaned off, or on the altars at home as well, to the smell, right, and the smoke to guide the spirits home. And also special foods, things like pan de muerto, which is a special bread. Pan de muerto means bread of the dead, so a special bread that's eaten during Dia de Muertos. Mole, which is a special sauce made of the cocoa bean that's mixed in with, a lot. You can mix it in with chicken or other foods as well. Atole is a delicious drink that is, drunk a lot during Dia de Muertos, so special foods around that time as well. So now we are going to listen to a conversation, a little podcast between two people who are discussing the similarities and differences between Dia de Muertos and Halloween.
Hey, Jordan. It's so cool that we're chatting about our favorite traditions from our countries, Dia de los Muertos and Halloween. Honestly, it's fascinating to see how different yet similar they are. What do you think?
Alex, I'm so excited to dive into this. Halloween is such a blast. Dressing up, trick-or-treating, the haunted houses, it's like our own spooky adventure. How is Day of the Dead different for you?
Well, Jordan, Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, is not just about costumes or candy. It's a time to celebrate and remember those who have passed. We set up altars, decorate them with marigolds, their favorite foods, and little sugar skulls.
Wow, that sounds so meaningful. I guess with Halloween, we don't really focus on remembering people. It's more about the thrill and fun. But I love the idea of connecting with loved ones. Do you think there's a special part of the celebrations for you?
Absolutely. For me, it's the gathering with family and friends. We share stories about our ancestors, and there's this beautiful sense of community. The moment when we light candles on the altar, it's really serene. What about you? Anything particular you love?
Probably the costume parties. I love how creative people get, And the candy, can't forget that. But honestly, hearing your side, it makes Halloween feel a bit, shallow?
Nah, not at all. Every celebration has its own charm, right? The creativity of Halloween, the way people transform their homes into horror shows, that's amazing. It's just different, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's all about embracing our culture and traditions, no matter how different they are. I'd love to experience Day of the Dead someday.
You'd be welcomed with open arms, Jordan. I mean, it's all about sharing, and I bet you'd love the vibrant atmosphere. Maybe one day, I'll join you for a spooky Halloween night too.
That sounds awesome, Alex. It's all about exchanging vibes and learning from each other, isn't it? Whether it's celebrating life or having fun with fears, there's so much joy in both.
Exactly. It's about finding joy in our unique traditions. So here's to sharing stories and making memories. Cheers to that.
Cheers, Alex. Here's to vibrant celebrations and the stories